Okay, hi everyone. So this is a continuation of our discussion of anti-Semitism. So we've been trying in Essex history to understand how modern anti-Semitism, which um, found its deadliest expression, its deadliest form in the final solution. We've been trying to see how that evolved in the course of the centuries, in especially particularly in Europe. Okay, now we come to the more modern phase. Okay, and you will see that it's actually a combination of particular modern elements. What I mean is, you will see, for instance, the emergence of certain pseudo-scientific um, disciplines, and then also, some of these ideas would be combined with long-standing, long-standing prejudices about the Jews, and then it'll take a more violent form once, you know, all of these ideas mix in together in the consciousness, in the mind of Adolf Hitler, right? And then he will express this hatred towards the Jews, in horrific ways as he tried to conquer parts of Europe and then eventually enact the final solution. So, in order to be able to understand this, we have to go back to, you know, um, an author who really made an impact in the late 19th century. So I'm referring to Charles Darwin. Remember, you've probably heard about him already, that he wrote The Origin of Species and then The Descent of Man. So what is important about these two books? In these writings, Darwin put forth this idea of um, evolution, that you know that creatures, that animals, they and by extension plants, didn't always have the form that they have today, that it took uh, a very long time for them to develop certain characteristics. And an important element of this idea, of an important component of this idea of evolution, is that you know organisms, animals, they had to change. I mean, physically, biologically speaking, they had to change in order for their group, their species, to be able to survive given the circumstances in which they were placed. Now, of course, there were different reactions to the theories of Darwin, and one of them is to one of the reactions was to apply Darwinist theory to society. So you call that usually social Darwinism. And what is the basic idea? First, that, well, human beings are, you know, much closer to animals than we previously thought. It's a very traditional idea to think that that human beings were superior to animals, totally distinct given our rational capacities. But then some people thought that, given what Darwin said, actually we share so many similarities. One being that we want to be able to survive, and some groups of humans are stronger than others and are more adapted to their circumstances, to their environments. And so there are stronger types of human beings in contrast to weaker ones. And what you have in history, what you have in society, is this constant struggle or conflict between the weaker ones and the stronger types of human beings. Okay, and these groups were discussed, were were talked about in terms of race. So there are different groups, different races. Some are superior to others. And then you also have, people who saw themselves as writing in the name of science, who put forward their ideas as scientific. So you would have, for instance, in France, Gobineau, and then you would have Houston Stewart Chamberlain, um, in this English-born German writer, and they started to apply similar ideas, understandings of race based on what was supposedly science, and they applied this to a reading of human history. So, for instance, Chamberlain talked about some master race, Aryan races, and he supposed that these races, the Aryan race, you know, were the true master race, productive, the most productive race of humanity, while on the other hand, the Jewish race was an anti-race. This was you can say the opposite or the enemy. They were parasitic. They fed upon, they were dependent upon the strong races. They protected themselves from contamination, while at the same time they contaminated the stronger races. Okay, Chamberlain's book, was influential. It had a large readership, meaning a lot of people read it, including our friend Adolf Hitler. And then there's another area or discipline that presented itself as scientific. Nowadays, we understand eugenics as this way of thinking that supposes that there's a way to reproduce. There's a way for humans to reproduce such that certain desirable qualities are passed on to the next generation. So you have this so-called science of eugenics, and then part of among the claims of people who subscribe to eugenics was that one needed to, a people, a nation had to guard against degeneration, that there are certain individuals who were degenerate, meaning they were, becoming worse. And they had certain tendencies, like the tendency to become a criminal, the tendency to become crazy. So you have to prevent those people from reproducing, because if crazy people, if criminals kept on reproducing, that would mean that you would have a society of people who are not productive, who wouldn't work towards the good of society, who would just cause trouble, you know, within the nation. And in a way, this goes against one of the basic foundational ideas of Christianity. Christianity, at least, the types of Christianity that's close to what's written in the Bible. Christianity is a religion for the weak. The Christian community serves or helps out the weak, the poor, the widow, the orphan. Okay, but then you have the idea of eugenics and other pseudosciences, social Darwinism, trying to convince people that we should not let people like this reproduce. So it's either we sterilize them, so you perform a medical operation so that they won't be able to have babies, or you outright exterminate them. Okay. And then one more thing. Um, there was this great conspiracy theory that that went around, that circulated in the late 19th century. According to this conspiracy theory, there's this cabal, there's this group of elderly or old Jewish leaders, influential people, bankers, that met together in order to influence world politics and in order for them to be able to, for them meaning the Jewish race, to be able to eventually dominate the entire world. We know now that actually this so-called Protocols of the Elders of Zion, this was supposed to be a document. It was actually doctored. It was invented by um, agents of the Russian Emperor's secret police because they wanted to convince the then emperor of seeing the the enormity of the Jewish threat, that the Jews in Russia were a threat to the regime and to the nation. So they they concocted, so they drew up this document. It was a fake document in order to be able to convince the emperor. The Times of London reported about this, considered to be authentic. Later on, after a while, some reporters would identify this document as a fake. But then it's very influential. It's still all over the internet. You can still look for it. And me being a reader of graphic novels, there's actually a graphic novel created by a comic book, basically created by Will Eisner. You can call him the grandfather of the American graphic novel. He tells the story in comic book form of the forgery, the creation of the protocols of the elders of Zion, and how this fake document became so influential and it's still circulating, on the internet and around the world up until today. Okay, I'll stop there and I'll continue in the next recording.